Would you use a DNA testing kit to delve into your family history, or have you done so already? In today's episode of History Calling, we're going to look at the pros and cons of these kits, including the cost and reliability of the tests, the kind of information you get back from them, and what can happen to the personal data you give to testing companies. I'll also share some real-life stories from around the world of people who discovered far more than they were expecting when their results came in. From the identical twins who were told they had different ancestry, to stories of secret affairs, deliberate crimes and accidental mix-ups at fertility clinics, and even a shocking double murder. DNA testing has been used in crime fighting since the mid-1980s, but by the start of the 21st century, the technology had developed enough that it could be offered on the open market to those who could and would pay to find out more about their ancestry by studying their DNA. Enter the home DNA testing kit. Customers send the companies who provide these kits a sample of their DNA, and they get back a report providing an analysis of their genes. It's become a huge industry for companies like Ancestry, 23andMe, and MyHeritage, with nearly 50 million people thought to have provided samples by 2024, and kits have become a popular Christmas or birthday present for many. But what are the advantages and disadvantages of using this technology in this way? Let's start with the pros. DNA kits may have begun as expensive luxury goods. 23andMe's kit was $999 in 2007, but over the years they have come down in price to be much more affordable. At the time of creating this video, Ancestry were marketing theirs at £79 for a basic kit and £94 for a more premium option that included analysis of your personality traits. More on that later. The MyHeritage option was also £79, and 23andMe had kits ranging from £99 to $218. Again, the more money you spend, the more information they promise you. These prices put the kits firmly in the range of the middle classes, especially as people can rationalise it as a once-in-a-lifetime expense. Modern DNA kits are also very easy to use. Long gone are the days when a medical professional would have to draw a vial of blood from you to check your genes. Now, a simple swab of the inside of your cheek or a vial of your spit will do the job. It's also much quicker, easier, and often cheaper to learn about your ancestry in this way, compared to researching your forebears by using documentary evidence, headstones, and the like, for the time and money needed to locate and purchase certificates can quickly mount up. A traditional family tree can also theoretically fall prey to mistakes if one of your ancestors was quietly adopted, conceived with donor sperm or eggs, or the result of an affair, whereas your DNA won't lie. It will tell you who your real genetic relations are, no matter what a birth certificate might say. For some, this is very attractive, especially if they aren't sure where they come from. That brings us to one of the most obvious pros of these kits: the ability to discover long-lost family members. When you provide your DNA to one of these companies, it is placed into a massive database containing other clients' DNA and compared to it. This allows the company to tell you who is related to you and provide you with a family tree showing distant cousins, as well as close relatives. For people who have a gap in their family tree, perhaps because they don't know who one or more of their parents or grandparents were, this can be the only way to fill in such blanks. Even children abandoned at birth now have a shot at finding their biological families and getting answers to questions which may have plagued them their whole lives. Failing that, it's possible to find siblings too. In the UK, 3 babies were abandoned in London between 2017 and 2024. DNA testing has revealed that they are full siblings, though their parents have yet to be found. I wonder how much longer they will be able to hide what they've done though. For while DNA testing relies on one's genetic relations having also taken a test with the same company so that their DNA is in the same database as yours, people can be tracked down not because they submitted a sample, but because one of their near relations did. Perhaps when these 3 children are older, they will be able to use their DNA to obtain further answers about where they come from if one of their biological aunts, uncles, or cousins, etc. has taken a DNA test. Furthermore, if you're prepared to take multiple tests so that your DNA can be compared to multiple databases, you can also increase your chances of a hit. And with so many tens of millions of people having now provided samples, the chances of finding a match are greater than ever and increasing all the time. Discovering a long-lost relation can even allow you to claim citizenship of a country you never knew you had a connection to. In an episode of the TV show DNA Family Secrets from 2022, a man named Richard was featured who didn't know who his father was. He had been born in Liverpool and raised by his mother, who he said just made up stories about his other parent. One DNA test later, though, and he discovered a half-sibling, which in turn allowed him to discover that his biological father, who was still alive, was Irish. Armed with this information and with his father's assistance, he was able to have his birth certificate amended, then use it to gain an Irish passport. He found this particularly helpful as it gave him back his EU citizenship, lost when the UK Brexited, and he and his wife subsequently moved to Spain. Next, we have the fact that these kits can reveal if you're at risk of developing certain illnesses, and the manufacturers will often spin this in a positive light by telling you that it allows you to make better health and lifestyle decisions and take preventative healthcare steps. This is indeed true sometimes. For instance, 23andMe touts the fact that it can tell you if you have the BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene, which predispose you to cancer. You may remember in 2013 that the actress Angelina Jolie discovered that she carries BRCA1 and so opted to have her ovaries removed and a double mastectomy to reduce her chances of ever getting the disease. On a more lighthearted note, some tests also claim to be able to tell you about your personality traits, though I suspect most of us already know what our personalities are like. Now let's look at the cons associated with these tests. First of all, if you do want to have your DNA checked against multiple databases to maximize your chances of finding blood relations, you'll need to take tests with numerous companies, and the costs can soon mount up. Second, the results you're going to get can be very impersonal and even vague. You might be able to discover family members still living or only recently deceased, but you'll learn nothing about the lives and personalities of those who are long dead, and you won't know where that 9% Scandinavian ancestry came from, or even if it originated with the same ancestor. A DNA test can't tell you what your great-great-grandfather experienced in the war, or when or where your 5 times great-grandparents lived and when they were born, married, or died. You're going to need to do proper genealogical research for that. That's no bad thing though. Researching your family using certificates, headstones, old family Bibles, war medals and photographs can be a huge amount of fun and very rewarding, I speak from experience. It's a hobby that can last you for years and make you feel far more connected to your family than simply reading a cold clinical percentage breakdown of your genes. It fleshes out your long-gone relations and makes them feel real to you in a way that a DNA test never will. With that in mind, if you have Irish ancestry, you might like to purchase my book, Find Your Irish Ancestors Online. It's a directory of hundreds of websites which provide certificates, transcripts, photographs and other information that can help you to build out your Irish family tree and learn your family stories. The websites are graded on a simple star system to tell you which ones are the best, and the book will also share with you which ones are free, and a huge number are by the way, and provide tips on how best to use them. It's organised into 17 chapters and covers all the major genealogical topics like births, marriages and deaths, burials and headstones, census returns, wills, emigration records, military history and education. At the time this video is going live, it's available for pre-order from Amazon. There's a link in the description box below, and if you're watching after the book is out, then of course you can buy it right away. The third con to these tests is the emotional fallout they can cause, which can be huge. The number of stories of people discovering that one or both of their parents aren't their biological parents, for instance, has snowballed as the tests have become cheaper and more popular. Long-hidden affairs and undisclosed adoptions or egg and sperm donations have been exposed, and people have discovered parents or children that they never knew existed. I listened to one story whilst researching this video about a man who'd spent decades researching his family tree and organising family reunions with people he thought were distant relatives, only to discover after taking a DNA test that none of the people on it were his biological family. Not only had he been adopted, the hospital he was adopted from was at the centre of a forced adoption scandal. The implications were clear. He tracked down his birth mother, who confirmed that she was unwed at the time of his arrival and was forced to give him up. Compounding the turmoil caused by these revelations was the fact that his adoptive parents weren't alive anymore to answer his questions about how he came into their family and why they had never told him about his origins. Many people find themselves in similar situations and describe a sense of betrayal when they learn that their parentage is not what they expected, and that their presumed birth parents withheld that information from them. Even if you know you're adopted or that one parent isn't your biological mother or father, being faced with your birth family on a screen when you weren't expecting it, potentially followed almost immediately by reach-outs on social media from people you've only just found out exist and now can't quite get away from, also means that there is no chance to receive counselling about these earth-shattering revelations or move at a slower pace. On the flip side of this are the legal but closed adoptions where the biological parents don't want their offspring to find them. Eventually, it could become all but impossible to facilitate this, no matter whether adoption records are sealed or not. As fun as they often are to take, DNA tests can be a double-edged sword indeed, and we haven't even reached the thorny topic of fertility crimes. As DNA testing has proliferated, it has exposed an alarming number of so-called fertility crimes, or at least activities which I think should be viewed as crimes, though the law doesn't always class them as such. The Netflix documentary Our Father tells the horror story of Dr. Donald Klein, who inseminated patients at his clinic in the 1970s and 80s with his own genetic material instead of their husbands, partners, or chosen donors, without even telling them. He fathered at least 94 children in this way, a fact that only came to light when the home DNA kit market took off and his biological children began discovering each other and comparing their birth stories. A similar crime was committed by Dr. Burton Caldwell, with the result that 2 of his biological children actually dated in high school in Connecticut and slept together, with no idea that they were half-siblings. DNA testing further revealed that the woman in question also went to elementary school with another sibling and lived near twins she didn't realize were her siblings too. According to a report about their story from CNN, more than 30 doctors around the country, meaning the United States, have been caught or accused of covertly using their own sperm to impregnate their patients. Advocates say they know of at least 80. Despite these obvious problems, fertility treatments remain shockingly under-regulated, and fertility fraud of this kind is rarely well punished, as laws have not always caught up with the technology yet. Even if we discount deliberate actions like these, DNA tests have also flagged up apparently unintentional but devastating errors made at similar clinics around the world. A 2023 article in the Guardian newspaper tells the story of a couple who used IVF to conceive at the University of Utah Center for Reproductive Medicine. They welcomed their son in 2008 and everything seemed fine. Until, that is, the family took DNA tests in 2019 for fun and discovered that their son's biological father was someone else entirely. It turned out that the other couple had been at the same clinic on the same day and with an appointment slot right after the first couple. Some sort of mix-up evidently occurred, and these 2 families are now left to pick up the pieces. There is also the possibility of finding out something terrible about your nearest and dearest. An Australian man named Andrew, whose American father John had died, wanted to learn more about his parent, who had only told him that he'd grown up in a Chicago orphanage before emigrating. The Chicago birth certificate Andrew had for his father turned out to be a fake though, and so Andrew took an ancestry DNA test. Soon, American law enforcement were involved. They'd been looking for John for decades, because it transpired He'd murdered his own parents whilst a teenager, then escaped from prison and gone on the run, ultimately moving to Australia. These kits can even lead to people questioning or having to completely reevaluate their ethnicity and sense of self. A London woman of Caribbean descent, who I read about whilst researching this video, had always believed that she had Indian ancestry too, only to discover that that wasn't the case. She said of her experience, "That little thing of not having any Indian ancestry is now sitting on my shoulder. I may not be as much a part of this tribe as I thought I was. If I had to do it again, I wouldn't." Then there's the fact that these results are not as accurate or infallible as they are often marketed as being. Many people, without a deep understanding of the science behind them, assume that a DNA test can't be wrong. But really, it depends on the type and quality of the technology being used and the databases your sample is being compared against. One of my favourite examples to demonstrate why you shouldn't just automatically trust the percentage breakdown of ethnicity that your at-home DNA test gives you is the case of the Canadian identical twins who got different results. Identical twins, as you may know, have virtually identical DNA. There's evidence that there can be tiny differences, but they are so minuscule it's hardly worth mentioning. And these two women, as full siblings, would have exactly the same ancestors even if they weren't identical. Yet none of the 5 companies whose DNA kits they used in 2018 gave them identical results. Those companies, by the way, were Ancestry DNA, MyHeritage, 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, and Living DNA. For instance, 23andMe told one sister she was 25% Eastern European and the other that she was 28%, and allotted one woman 2.6% French and German ancestry, yet none to her twin. Meanwhile, Ancestry DNA gave the women 37% and 39% Eastern European genes, while MyHeritage instead plumped for about 60.6% Balkan roots. Living DNA said one twin descended partly from Scotland and Ireland, but the other sister did not. Instead, she had English heritage. Finally, Family Tree DNA gave them 13 to 14% Middle Eastern roots, which is quite a hefty amount. It's about the equivalent of one great-grandparent, yet 2 other companies didn't find any at all. So what was going on, and how can these discrepancies be explained? The raw data generated by these companies, upon which they had based their analysis, was sent to a team at Yale who confirmed that the sisters' DNA is 99.6% identical. Remember, I mentioned there could be minuscule differences, plus there's always the possibility of contamination of the samples. According to a CBC article about the case, they hypothesized that the different results were down to, quote, the algorithms each company uses to crunch the DNA data. The article quoted one Yale scientist as saying, "The story has to be the calculation. The way these calculations are run are different." When 23andMe was approached for comment, they said that even those minor variations, presumably the 0.4% difference in the raw data files, can lead its algorithm to assign slightly different ancestry estimates. The company said it approaches the development of its tools and reports with scientific rigor, but admits its results are statistical estimates. The article also explained the odd results by saying, different companies use different panels, so they're each likely to provide the same customer with different ancestry results. In a statement to Marketplace, Ancestry DNA acknowledged that the size of the reference panel is key. The company said it is always working to improve its science, and that its new, larger reference panel will give customers more precise results. There are a variety of factors that can affect the accuracy of results from an ancestry company, but of particular importance is the size and quality of its reference panel. The larger and more representative it is, the more accurate the results. If you have fewer people that you can compare to, then you make more shortcuts. You also run more of a risk of having missed diversity that you might not know existed in one particular region. Another reason for discrepancies in the results from different companies is the arbitrary way each company defines the world's regions. The tests tend to be more accurate for people with European ancestry, as more people with that particular background have been tested. One Yale expert even warned, quote, people not to interpret their test results as definitive. He says a testing company can use DNA ancestry kits to trace a person's ancestry to a particular continent with statistical accuracy. But anything more specific than that, like pinpointing a country or town, is less reliable. In another 2018 article from The Guardian, a professor of evolutionary genetics at University College London explained that we probably inherit very few genes from our ancestors. DNA is inherited in chunks that break up the further back in time you go. You start with 2 parents, then 4 grandparents, then 8 great-grandparents. It goes to 16, 32, and so on, and by the time you go 10 generations back, there are ancestors from whom you inherit no DNA. So the whole system of DNA testing, when we aren't looking at identifying very close relations, is actually a lot more complex than most people realise. Let's turn now to the downsides to the health information you can get from these tests. Sure, it can be useful to know you have a predisposition to a serious illness if there is something you can do to combat that risk, as Angelina Jolie did. But in cases where there's nothing you can do, is there any point in finding out you might get something in later life? Some people may be able to just move on and forget about it, but others will spend much time worrying about something that might never happen and spoil the rest of their lives. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. The claims that personality traits can be predicted from your DNA is also rather hit and miss. A group of researchers from the Independent newspaper tested out a bunch of DNA tests from different companies in 2024 and found that only about 60% of the predicted traits from the Ancestry DNA results rang true, with about 70% from the 23andMe kit. Finally, we should consider the fact that in using these tests, we are giving our DNA out to a commercial company, and people often do not read the terms and conditions documents in detail to understand what can be done with their data, or what might happen to it if the company goes bust or is bought over. Before we discuss that issue though, to support the channel and stay up to date with all my latest episodes, make sure to tap those like and subscribe buttons and switch on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. For bonus material from History Calling, you can also join my YouTube members by hitting the join button below videos or on my channel homepage and following the on-screen instructions, or you can find me on Patreon, Instagram and my Amazon storefront. If you sign up to my free newsletter on my website, historycallingofficial.com, you'll also get a complimentary guide giving you 5 quick and easy tips for recognising good history books versus bad. All the links you'll need are below for you. Finally, a big thank you too to those of you who donate to the channel using the thanks button underneath videos for your very kind generosity. It had emerged by 2024 that 23andMe was close to bankruptcy, and if you read part of their privacy statement, it says that if we are involved in a bankruptcy, merger, acquisition, reorganization, or sale of assets, your personal information may be accessed, sold, or transferred as part of that transaction, and this privacy statement will apply to your personal information as transferred to the new entity. We may also disclose personal information about you to our corporate affiliates to help operate our services and our affiliates' services. An article from the website The Conversation, dated the 18th of October 2024, discusses the possibility of 23andMe going broke and says that the simplest thing is to delete your account, which opts you out of any future research and discards your saliva sample. But if your data has already been de-identified and used in research, it can't be retrieved. And even if you delete your account, 23andMe says it will keep hold of information, including your genetic data, date of birth and sex, to comply with its own legal obligations. If your data from this company or another does end up in the hands of a third party you never intended should have it, what does that mean? Could your predisposition to Alzheimer's eventually affect your ability to get health or travel insurance, for instance, or be hired for a job? You might think you would always read the terms and conditions and never agree to anything that could lead to that situation, but bear this quote in mind from another article in The Conversation dated 2016. It is common to include clauses allowing the company to alter terms at any time, often without notice to you. This means that even if the contract seemed acceptable when you clicked I agree, they could later use your data in ways you might not like. This could even mean sharing it with marketing companies, your employer, your insurer, or with law enforcement. Even setting aside the possibility of your data being given to or acquired by another company in a legal manner, there's also the possibility of hacking. And here too, 23andMe have had some bad luck. It was breached in 2023 in a hack affecting about 14,000 customers, when a bad actor accessed these people's DNA relatives profiles and family tree profiles. Of course, the group of people who I would imagine hate the sight of those DNA kit adverts the most are criminals who now have to worry that they've left their DNA at a crime scene and that they will eventually be tracked down because one of their siblings or other relations decides to spring for a DNA test for a bit of fun. The Golden State Killer from the United States was caught, for instance, because of the GEDmatch DNA database, and that was despite the fact that investigators were only able to track down his distant cousins. As the technology improves and more people put their information into these databases, it's only going to get easier to track criminals. Personally, I find this to be a real silver lining to offset some of the negatives associated with the tests, though, and would be delighted if a lot more offenders could face justice for their crimes thanks to this technology. Basically then, once you've let your DNA and your data go, whether by leaving it at a crime scene or by sending it into a company for analysis, in many cases you've relinquished control of it, likely forever. It's a scary thought, but I suspect it's one that a great number of people never have when they are buying DNA testing kits, whether for themselves or for family members and friends who they then put under emotional pressure to use it because the purchaser spent good money buying it. Parents who are having their minor children take these tests should perhaps also think about the information they are putting out into the world about that kid without the child really being able to give meaningful consent or claw their information back at a later date. So what do I make of DNA tests? Well, I think that for a person who has a gap in their family tree, like a missing parent or grandparent, and no other way to fill it, these kits can be an amazing way to discover more about their roots. And in many ways, we are lucky to have the option to track down our biological family like this, as it's only in the 21st century that such an option has become available. Given that tens of millions of people have used these tests, I think I should also point out that most seem to have had positive experiences with them. The negative stories, like those I've shared here, are, I believe, only a small percentage of the whole. I also think, though, that a lot of people don't think carefully enough about the emotional roller coaster they could be signing up for, or consider that they might have to invest in multiple tests to maximize their chances of getting answers. Not only is this expensive, but it exposes your private information to a large number of companies and individuals. If you don't fall into this group of people with gaps in your family tree, then I wouldn't personally say that these tests are worth it. Researching your family tree properly using primary sources like certificates, headstones, and photographs is more fun and rewarding in my opinion. If you are determined to use one or more of these tests, though, I would advise that you make sure to take the time to read the terms and conditions associated with them and that you really understand what you're getting yourself into. Think long and hard too about whether you truly want to know medical information, and bear in mind the limitations of these tests. It's certainly worth investigating them in detail to understand better how they work. This video has only been a brief introduction to them and shouldn't be the beginning and end of your research. I'll finish by telling you that I've never taken a DNA test and I have no intention of doing so. Let me know below what you think of DNA testing kits. Have you used one? And if so, what was your experience with it? Or if you haven't, would you take such a test or not, and why? I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, keep learning.